Oliver Cromwell is one of the most divisive and consequential figures in English history. His legacy as both a military leader and a statesman has sparked considerable debate, with some viewing him as a champion of liberty and a defender of parliamentary democracy, while others see him as a ruthless tyrant who paved the way for authoritarian rule. Cromwell rose from relatively humble beginnings to become the leader of the parliamentary forces during the English Civil War, the de facto ruler of the Commonwealth, and Lord Protector of England, Scotland, and Ireland. His life and actions set the stage for a dramatic reshaping of English politics and government, ultimately leading to the temporary abolition of the monarchy and the establishment of a republican government. Oliver Cromwell was born on April 25, 1599, in Huntingdon, Cambridgeshire, into a moderately wealthy family. His father, Robert Cromwell, was a landowner and a prominent local figure, and his mother, Elizabeth Stewart, came from a respectable background. Oliver was educated at Huntingdon Grammar School and later at Sidney Sussex College, Cambridge, where he became acquainted with some of the religious and political ideas that would later shape his world view. Cromwell was deeply religious from a young age and was influenced by Puritanism, which called for a stricter interpretation of the Bible and a rejection of the perceived corruption and ceremonial excesses of the Church of England. In 1620, Cromwell inherited the family estate in Huntingdon after the death of his father. By this time, he had become involved in local politics, aligning himself with Puritan causes. His early political career was marked by a modest but steady rise, and he was elected as a Member of Parliament, MP, for Huntingdon in 1628. Cromwell was relatively unknown at this stage, but his deep commitment to Puritan ideals and his opposition to the religious policies of King Charles I set the stage for his later prominence. Cromwell's life took a dramatic turn in the early 1640s. In 1640, when the Long Parliament was convened to address the political and financial crises facing the kingdom, Cromwell was once again elected as an MP, this time for Cambridge. His political engagement became increasingly focused on the growing tensions between King Charles I and Parliament. Cromwell's Puritan views led him to oppose Charles's policies, particularly his attempts to impose religious uniformity through the Church of England. He was deeply distrustful of the monarchy and believed that the king's attempts to rule without Parliament were a violation of the principles of English liberty. The outbreak of the English Civil War in 1642 marked a turning point in Cromwell's life. The war pitted the royalists, who supported King Charles I, against the parliamentarians, who sought to limit the king's power and uphold parliamentary sovereignty. Cromwell initially joined the parliamentary army, not as a military officer, but as a cavalry captain. His leadership, however, quickly set him apart. Cromwell's military career was marked by his exceptional organizational skills, his deep religious conviction, and his ability to inspire loyalty and discipline in his troops. As the war progressed, Cromwell's army, known as the New Model Army, emerged as one of the most formidable military forces in Europe. The New Model Army was a revolutionary development in English military history. It was based on merit rather than social class, and its soldiers were drawn from all walks of life, united by their commitment to the parliamentary cause and, for many, to Puritan ideals. Cromwell's military success was due to a combination of factors: his ability to harness the enthusiasm and religious fervor of his soldiers, his skill in organizing and commanding troops, and his pragmatic approach to military strategy. His leadership was also marked by a sense of personal responsibility and a commitment to the principle of righteous warfare. Cromwell believed that he was fighting a just war on behalf of God, and his religious convictions were a driving force behind his success. His decisive victories at battles such as Marston Moor, 1644, and Naseby, 1645, turned the tide of the Civil War in favour of the parliamentarians. Cromwell's victory at Naseby, in particular, was a decisive moment in the Civil War. It effectively crushed the royalist forces and left King Charles I with no option but to surrender. This victory solidified Cromwell's reputation as one of the leading figures in the parliamentary cause and set the stage for his rise to power in the post-war political landscape. After the Civil War, Charles I was captured by Parliament, and negotiations between the King and Parliament failed to produce a resolution. In 1649, after a trial in which he was charged with treason, Charles was executed by beheading. The execution of the king marked the formal end of the monarchy and the beginning of the English Republic, also known as the Commonwealth. Cromwell, along with other prominent leaders in the parliamentary army, played a key role in the decision to execute Charles. The execution of Charles I was a momentous event in English history. It not only ended the monarchy, but also challenged the very notion of divine right and absolute monarchy, which had been central to the political order of England for centuries. For many, the execution was a step toward the establishment of a government based on the will of the people. But for others, it represented a dangerous and unlawful act of regicide. Following the execution, Cromwell emerged as one of the most powerful figures in the new Commonwealth. The period of Republican rule that followed the execution of Charles I was marked by instability and internal division. The radical factions within the Parliament sought to create a more egalitarian society, while conservatives sought to preserve the existing social order. Cromwell, who had been a key figure in the execution of the king, became increasingly disillusioned with the inability of Parliament to stabilize the country. He saw himself as a guardian of the Republic, but his commitment to maintaining order led him to take increasingly authoritarian actions. In 1653, Cromwell dissolved the Rump Parliament, the remnant of the Long Parliament, and established the Protectorate, a new form of government in which he would serve as Lord Protector. This marked the beginning of Cromwell's de facto rule over England, Scotland, and Ireland. As Lord Protector, Cromwell was given executive power over the English Commonwealth, though he was still nominally bound by the laws of the Republic. Cromwell's rule was characterized by a combination of authoritarian measures and attempts at reform. He sought to create a government that was both morally righteous and politically stable. Cromwell's personal belief in the importance of religious freedom and his desire to create a godly society led him to support a range of reforms, including greater religious tolerance for Protestants and Jews, as well as the promotion of moral reforms aimed at curbing vice and immorality. Cromwell's political power was limited by the need to balance competing interests within the Commonwealth. He faced opposition from royalists who sought to restore the monarchy, as well as from radical republicans who believed that the Commonwealth should be more democratic. Cromwell also had to deal with the legacy of the wars with Scotland and Ireland, and his policies toward these regions were harsh and often controversial. In Ireland, Cromwell's military campaign in the 1640s and 1650s was particularly brutal. His army's siege of Drogheda in 1649, in which thousands of Irish soldiers and civilians were killed, remains one of the darkest chapters in his legacy. Cromwell justified his actions as necessary to quell the Irish rebellion, but his tactics alienated many and earned him a reputation as a ruthless conqueror. Despite his authoritarian rule, Cromwell's political vision was not one of absolute dictatorship. He attempted to rule with a sense of republican ideals, even if his methods of governance were at odds with these ideals. He sought to create a government that would be based on a moral order, which he saw as necessary for the stability and prosperity of England. Oliver Cromwell died on September 3, 1658, after a period of declining health. His death marked the end of the Protectorate, and his son, Richard Cromwell, briefly succeeded him as Lord Protector. However, Richard's rule lacked the strength and authority of his father, and within a year, the Protectorate collapsed. In 1660, the monarchy was restored under Charles II, ending the Republican experiment initiated by Cromwell. Cromwell's legacy is a subject of ongoing debate. For some, he is a hero who defended the principles of parliamentary sovereignty and religious freedom, a champion of the rights of the people against the monarchy. For others, he is a tyrant who ruled with authoritarianism and brutality, and whose actions, particularly in Ireland, stained his reputation.